Hi, I'm Rabbi Lynne and the congregation is Temple Emmanuel here in Dothan, Alabama. We are the only congregation in a 100-mile radius. I spent most of my life in the Northeast. Moving down here was a bit of an adjustment, but it certainly is a nice place. There's no snow, which is nice. The beach is only about 90 minutes away. Summers could be a little toasty, but most of the time it's pretty nice. I was ordained in the year 2007, so I've been here almost 10 years. I am a second career rabbi. I spent 25 years in accounting before that. The seminary is 5 years long. People are always kind of surprised when I tell them that. 5 years of postgraduate work, 1 year in Jerusalem, and then 4 years on campus in Cincinnati, Ohio. What convinced me to move to Dothan was actually a couple of things. The congregation itself was very, very upbeat. I could not believe when I read their application. They talked a lot about the partnership between the rabbi and the congregation. They didn't expect that the rabbi was going to come in and be some kind of a miracle worker and solve all their problems. They really thought that it would be a partnership. They had work to do, and I would too. But the other thing is I came down and I visited Dothan, and I was surprised. I'd never heard of Dothan, Alabama before I came down here. And it really is a very nice city. There's a lot going on here. People were so friendly. I couldn't believe when I was driving on the circle, somebody actually let me in to a lane. I didn't have to force my way in. It was kind of nice. So people were really nice. I really enjoyed meeting everybody, not just the people in the congregation, but I met a lot of people. And I was very, very impressed with how friendly everybody was. It's not the same as a Jewish family in a big city. To be honest, you have to work at being Jewish down here. As I said, we're the only Jewish congregation in a 100-mile radius. The congregation itself acts like a big family. When something happens to somebody in the congregation, the whole congregation gets involved. If there's a happy thing going on, everybody cooks. If somebody dies in the family, everybody is there to support them. So in that respect, I think it's very, very different from a larger congregation. We're very involved in the community. Most people are really surprised when I tell them that we only have 55 families. They think we're a lot bigger than we really are. But our footprint in the community is a lot bigger. People are involved in the community. I'm very involved in the community. And we're extremely involved in the interfaith community. So Jewish life down here, I think, is not as, you can't expect to be that everybody's going to know you're Jewish. When people find out you're Jewish, they might ask you a question or two. There's no anti-Semitism. I have yet in 10 years to have any hint of anti-Semitism anywhere. But they are curious. They will ask questions. I've had, what do Jews believe? What is it about being Jewish that's different from being a Christian? So a lot of really good questions. You have to go out of your way to get kosher food. But we can get things for Passover. We have things for Hanukkah. So Jewish life here is different, but it's different not in a bad way. I think it's different in a good way. My happiest moment here in Dothan, I have to say, I love the Interfaith Thanksgiving service. And that's probably the high point, I think, of my years here. It was begun 9 years ago by the Women in Ministry group that I'm a part of. And it started off relatively small, and it's grown every year. And this year, we held it at the synagogue. It goes from different churches to different religious organizations. This year, it was in the synagogue. Looking around and seeing all the people that were in our sanctuary, from all different walks of life, from all different religions, all different ethnicities, all getting together to give thanks to God. Definitely a high point. Neighbor Night was here before I got here. I kind of inherited it. It's a night that we invite the community to come in and observe one of our Shabbat services. As I said, people are very, very curious about Judaism. So they come in and I do a Shabbat service without as much Hebrew as I normally do. And I stop at different parts of the service and explain what we're doing and why we're doing it. And then at the end, and my congregation is so happy, I don't do a sermon. I do an Ask the Rabbi, and people ask all kinds of questions. Some of them I can't answer, and I'm pretty honest about it. Some of them are kind of silly, but they're very curious about what Judaism is all about. But it's a wonderful time, and we usually get around 100 people will come to the service. And of course, we have a wonderful reception afterwards, and they like our cooking too. Our Holocaust Torah it's when people ask us on Neighbor Night to take out the Torah, they're just curious to see what a Torah looks like. Our Holocaust Torah has a very special story. Well, and I just found out about it when I got here. There was a refugee who came from Germany here in 1941 when the temple was actually built. And they were opening the temple for the first time, and they needed a Torah. And he had one. He needed money, so they bought the Torah from him. And we've used the Torah for 70 years. The first time I opened it, I looked at it, and the lettering was very different from any Torah I'd ever seen. I've seen 10 or 12 different Torahs. And it didn't look like the Torahs that I'd seen. And some of the lettering was coming off in the book of Leviticus. So we took it to a sofer, who is a Jewish scribe who actually writes Torahs, but they also repair Torahs. And we asked him if he could look at it and tell us how much it would cost to refurbish it. And he threw it open, and he looked at it, and his eyes widened. He goes, "Where did you get this Torah?" And I said, "It came from a refugee who got it out of a synagogue that was about to be burned on Kristallnacht." And he said, "It was in Germany." I said, "Yeah." He said, "It took a long trip." He said, "That's a Czech Torah." It was written in Czechoslovakia. It was written in a particular style, which is why the lettering looks so different, from the Maharal of Prague. And the reason the lettering is so different is each of the decorations on the letters mean something. So they actually write Torah commentary into the Torah. And if you can read all of their symbols, you would have a commentary on the Torah. Unfortunately, all the people who knew that commentary were killed in the Holocaust. So we will never know what that means, which is really horrible to think about. And they'll never write another Torah like it. Now, that being said, we don't have the only one. There are a number of them around the country. Ours is probably 150 to 200 years old. And I wish it could talk. I would love to hear what it has to say. So that's the Torah I read from most Friday nights when I read from Torah, because it's lighter than the other one, but also because it's a powerful symbol to me. It's a Torah that should have been burned on Kristallnacht, but it's still here. And Hitler wanted to get rid of the Jews, and we're still here. So I'm kind of spitting in Hitler's eyes whenever I read from that Torah. We're much smaller, obviously, than a large synagogue. In fact, we're probably one of the smaller congregations in the Reform movement. We do all the same things the big ones do. I mean, we read from Torah. We have services every week. We have a religious school. We do adult education. We're involved in the community. Obviously, we don't have the budget that the larger ones have, and we don't have the manpower that the larger ones have. We don't have a staff. There's me and a part-time secretary. But the congregation itself does get involved in everything, and I think that makes a really big difference. In the larger synagogues, they have people hired to do things, whereas when we have to get it done, people in the congregation have to do it. So we do all the things a bigger synagogue does, but on a smaller scale. I mean, obviously, we don't have paid for trips to Israel and things like that, but we do have a lot of things that we do. Our religious school kids, when they're confirmed, we take them up to Atlanta, and we go to the Holocaust Museum up there, and we do things on a smaller scale. Our religious school is, if I do say so myself, pretty awesome. Meets every Sunday. We have volunteer teachers who do a wonderful job. And the kids like being here. They kind of like it's fun, and it's the time when the kids can get together and be with other Jews. So many of them are the only kids in their religious school, or in their secular school. So coming to religious school, they can be with other Jews. And that being said, we also have a camp where the kids go in Utica, Mississippi. They go and they have a ball. They just love it, and everybody around them is Jewish. Everything is Jewish, and they just adore it. They have such a good time there. And they're very generous with scholarship, so all of our kids that want to go are able to go. Lifelong Jewish education is very important here. We have Torah study every Saturday morning, a really nice Torah study group, very, very, very interested in what's going on in the Torah and very articulate. I teach classes with other clergy around town, so we combine our congregations and learn together. But I also do things for the congregation as well, and I do courses depending on what's going on during the year, or talks depending on what's going on, and we bring in outside scholars as well. So there's quite a bit going on. Like I said, we're a small congregation, but we do everything the big dudes do. The Jewish community here is very well known, and as I said, we're small but mighty. Most people know that we exist. Most people know that there are Jews in Dothan, and we do a whole lot in the community. Our footprint is so much bigger than what our actual size would indicate. And I think it has to do with the vitality of the congregation, the history. It's got a long, wonderful history of Jews being involved in the community almost from the time it was formed. We do have a much larger footprint in the community, and we do enjoy the respect of people both in city government and also in the interfaith community as well. I've been here 10 years. There has not been, to my knowledge, one anti-Semitic incident here, ever. When the country club was built here, and I don't know how old it is, but I know that when it was built, there was no question that Jews would be welcome in the country club. And in fact, the country club to this day has a Hanukkah brunch that they put on every year. They have latkes and blintzes and all kinds of food that Jews would like, and is well attended by everybody who belongs to the country club because the food is so good. But to think that we're such a minority, and for them to actually put a brunch on for all the Jews is really nice. And people are more aware of us being around. I know occasionally I've gone to a meal somewhere, and they'll pull me aside and say, "You better not eat those beans because they put pork in it." So they're aware that we're around, and that I guess also that we don't eat pork. As my son keeps asking me, he says, why did you move down to a place where they have the best barbecue in the world and you don't eat it? In the public schools, you're talking about a vast, vast majority of the kids that go to the public schools are Christians. That being said, we've been pretty proactive with the principals of the schools. We contact them ahead of time about the high holidays and let them know the kids are going to be off school for 2 days and to please not schedule tests for that day or the day after, because some of the high school kids do fast. They are very curious about Hanukkah, and of course that always falls around Christmas, and even though it's such a minor holiday, that's the one I get the most times people come and call me and want me to come in and speak to the schools is around Hanukkah. And I'd really rather speak about the high holidays, but they like Hanukkah. So that being said, they are aware that we're there. There is a lot of Christmas in the schools, and there's no doubt about it. Your kids will come home with Santa Clauses and reindeer and all that kind of stuff. Overtly religious stuff, not so much. They do stay away from that. When you walk into the synagogue, you walk into a very warm place. The first night that I walked into the synagogue, nobody knew who I was. But 4 people came up and introduced themselves to me and asked me what I was doing there. When I told them I was the rabbinical candidate, they were kind of taken aback, I think. But it was, they were very, very friendly. And when people walk in, I've noticed it, when people walk in the door on Friday night, if they don't belong here, 3 or 4 people will go up and talk to them, which I think is very important, and make sure that they know where the prayer books are, make sure they know what page we're on in the prayer books, and then make sure they know that they can come back and have cookies and cake with us afterwards. And some really good coffee, if I do say so myself. The relocation project has had, I would say, a twofold impact on the community. Number one, the families that have been brought in, by and large, are very, very active families. They're serving on the board, they're serving in leadership roles in the sisterhood and the brotherhood. When you need something done, they're the families that are there. They're very, very active, and they do join. Because of the publicity of the relocation project, we have a lot of people are aware that we're here. And when they move here, either in the military or one of the medical centers, they look us up and they want to know who we are. So we grew from, I came here in 2007, we grew from 35 families to a high of 70. And the relocation project had brought in 9 or 10 families at that point. Those other 25 families came from the community. And I think a lot of it had to do with the publicity and also because of the warmth of the community when they walked in the door. The quality of life in Dothan is absolutely wonderful. I think kids in particular have some of the schools are very, very good. And I know the reputation Alabama has for education, but some of the schools are very, very good. It's very easy to find out which ones. And I think for being a Jewish family here, it's really funny when just the last couple of days there's been a long-running debate on the CCAR Facebook page about large versus small congregations. And by and large, most people are happier in smaller congregations because of the intimacy. And I think the intimacy here and the fact the large extended family feel that we have here is absolutely wonderful.